Hi all, in this video we're going to see about the feedback mechanisms of hormonal control. So this question can be asked as a part of a short essay or as a physiological basis question. So let's see what this concept is. So feedback control means it's a mechanism where the plasma hormone concentration regulates its secretion rate. So basically we've got two different types of feedback control. I'll just show it with an example with the help of a diagram. So suppose we have an endocrine cell which secretes the hormone A. Suppose it's A. This A will act on another target endocrine cell which will produce another hormone, say B. And this hormone will have biological effects. Now, if this hormone B inhibits its own production by inhibiting the higher order cell. So suppose this B is inhibiting this endocrine cell. That means it is inhibiting the production of A and thereby decreasing its own production. Now this is called negative feedback. Whereas if the same hormone B, suppose it acts in such a way that it is stimulating its own production, then it is called positive feedback. So basically we've got two types of feedback control. One is negative feedback and the other is positive feedback. So the different types are negative feedback, which is the most common type in which the hormone or the metabolites will inhibit its own secretion. Now this is most common because it helps to prevent hormonal hyperactivity. So once the role of hormone is done, you want the hormone to go back to its normal levels. So that is why we have this negative feedback loop. But in some conditions, you can have a positive feedback in which the hormone stimulates further secretion. So now we'll see more about this different type of feedback control. So first we'll see the negative feedback with the help of an example. So we know that we've got the hypothalamus which secretes the hormone corticotropin releasing hormone which acts on the anterior pituitary and thus cause the release of ACTH, adrenocorticotrophic hormone, which will act on the adrenals to produce the hormone cortisol, and thereby cortisol has its effects. Now, if cortisol inhibits its own production by inhibiting the production of the CRH, then that is called negative feedback. So, based on the level at which the inhibition occurs, you can have different feedback loops in negative feedback. You can have different feedback loops in negative feedback. So, this type of feedback, in which the target hormone inhibits a higher order gland, that is called long loop feedback. It is called long loop feedback. Now, suppose a middle order hormone, say ACTH, inhibits this CRH production, then that is called short loop feedback. And finally, if CRH itself inhibits its own production, then that is called ultra short loop feedback. So basically, we've got three types of loops in negative feedback: the long loop, short loop, and ultra short loop. Okay. So long loop is in which the target gland hormone inhibits the upper order gland like cortisol inhibiting the CRH. The short loop is the middle order gland inhibits the upper order gland. That means the ACTH is inhibiting the CRH. That is short loop. And ultra short loop means the hormone inhibits its own secretion, like CRH inhibiting its own secretion. That is ultra short loop. So like this, we've got many axes inside our body which acts on this different loops. The first one is the hypothalamo-pituitary-thyroid axis, in which we've got the hormones T3 and T4 inhibiting the production of the thyroid stimulating hormone and the thyrotropin releasing hormone. Now another example is the hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis, which we just mentioned now. And we also have the hypothalamo-pituitary gonadal axis, in which the sex hormones inhibit the gonadotropins LH and FSH. So this was about the negative feedback. So what about positive feedback mechanism? As I said, positive feedback means there's an increase in hormone secretion enhances its secretion. So the hormone itself will stimulate its own secretion. So this also we can see with the help of an example. So here, like I said before, the hypothalamus can produce the hormone gonadotropin releasing hormone, which will act on the anterior pituitary to produce the FSH and LH, which will act on the ovaries to produce estrogen. Now during the time of ovulation, This produced estrogen can actually stimulate its own production by stimulating the production of FSH, and GnRH, actually LH to be exact. So this type of feedback in which the target gland hormone stimulates its own production is called positive feedback mechanism. Now, as I said, negative feedback is more common, positive feedback is quite rare. So it's very important to know the examples of positive feedback mechanism. So the examples are, first one, as I just mentioned, the LH surge before ovulation. See, the elevated estrogen will stimulate the secretion of LH from the anterior pituitary, causing the surge necessary for ovulation. So that is an example for positive feedback. The other examples are oxytocin secretion during parturition and breastfeeding. That also in that also we have a positive feedback mechanism. Similarly, melatonin release in response to darkness. There also we've got a positive feedback mechanism. Examples of positive feedback is very important. So thus, if a short essay on feedback mechanisms of hormonal control is asked, you can start with the definition of what this feedback control is, what are the different types. You can write about the negative feedback with definition, the different loops and examples, and also positive feedback with the examples. So I hope this concept was useful for you. Thank you.